Hey BoLS fans, AdamHarry back again with another BoLS Retro Corner review. Today we are looking at something very cool, kind of old, but very cool. This is the Warhammer 40k Dark Millennium rulebook. This was actually a supplement for 2nd edition Warhammer 40k. It's pretty cool. It's got the Dark Angels on the front, see there. Pretty good stuff. What this was the supplement for Psychic Powers, Grey Knights, pretty much all the Psychic rules for everything in the game for 2nd edition, as you see here. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. It's got the classic 2nd edition art and look and style, and this book is just really cool. So you see here we have the Gene Stealer Magus down there in the corner, and then some of the other librarians. Blood Angels librarian here. We got Null Stormcaller right there. That's the original mini from 2nd edition, as you see there. Weird Boys. I don't know why the Dire Avenger Exarch in there. Maybe he has Psychic Powers at this point in the game. Clearly the Ultramarine did not, Assault Marine, but Sweetheart no, and then Eldar Warlock, of course, and then it goes through everything in here. This was a good, again, by Games Workshop, Andy Chambers. I believe the copyright on this right here is at 93, so this book's probably older than some of our viewers, but that's okay. It was fun stuff. This is kind of the early days of Psychic Powers, so again, it just goes through everything that... Dark Millennium was actually an expansion box too. There came with a bunch of tokens and a bunch of other stuff for the game, templates and stuff like that. But you see here, Psychic Powers, how to go through choosing them, determining them, all those, how the Psychic Power deck work and all that stuff, the special warp cards and everything like that. Psychic Power descriptions, it goes through those pretty vigorously. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Psychic Power commentaries. This is an interesting section right here. It talks about the Eldar powers, the Marine powers, Librarian powers, Adeptus powers, Inquisition powers, and then Weird Boy Psychic powers. And then it goes through Chaos, which is Slaanesh, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. Obviously there's no Khorne Psychic powers. And then also Squat Psychic powers and Tyranid Psychic powers. So pretty much all the races at the time, the major players that had Psykers, were in this book, and again, it was for all of the races in 40k at the time, so that's pretty cool. We go through the Wog powers here, all the Weird Boys and how those work. Grey Knight Terminators, this is also the first introduction of those guys, I believe. Daemons, we have strategy cards, extra strategy cards, because that was a part of the 2nd edition as well. Vehicle squadrons and support weapon batteries, how those worked. Extra vehicle cards. Space Marine Dreadnought rules were cleaned up and tightened up in this book as well, and then some victory point tables. So it's actually a fairly short book. It's not super long, but we'll go through it real quick. These are the different components that actually came in the box. You had Psychic Power cards, again, per race. There's different stuff. We had strategy cards, how you could use those. They had stuff like, what was it, Johnson's Acting Funny. That was one of the Tyranid ones that you could play, and traders and stuff like that. Orc vehicle cards, or just vehicle cards in general. We have warp cards here and counters. Rad grenades did different stuff back in 2nd edition than they do now. Virus grenades, traps, chaos, stuff like that. The different templates, this was De Crunch. This was a Foot of Gork or Mork, depending on whoever it was, would come and stomp on the army. It does say is the Foot of Gork, so I'm just going to go with that. Sorry, Mork. We have the Eldritch Storm Force Dome templates. These were actually pretty good sized templates that you could use either side. Excuse me. And we had the Death Wave, which is an Orc Death Wave, just kind of blasted it out, and it would travel. Anybody underneath it would get hit by that. Destructor Stream of Corruption, that was like a Flamer, uses the long cone-shaped template, which is the Flamer template. And then the Gate, which is an Adeptus power, we have that currently. It's to let you redeploy, basically. Hellfire, Machine Curse, stuff like that. Those were also big templates. Then Smite, Firestorm of Tzeentch. Those are also pretty cool templates as well. And then we just go through the Warp and Psykers, how those all work. Just talks about space travel and just real briefly here in this section, how the Warp is used for kind of day-to-day Psykers and stuff like that. So again, even the strongest Psyker is at risk for demonic possession and all that stuff like that. So Psykers are still, they're used, but they're still kept at arm's length because you could flip out and turn into a demon one day. So so choosing Psykers, it's just like, you know, it says here, choosing Psykers along with the rest of your army, just like appropriate Codex army list. So nothing changes there. Again, all depending on your game size and stuff like that. Some players prefer one really strong psychic, or other playstyles were, you know, many little psychic guys that maybe weren't as potent as individually, but worked really well together. So determine powers. So you basically pick from the decks. There was a different deck for each one, so you can see how all those decks kind of work together. It was kind of interesting. Librarians and Inquisition started with 8, Adeptus Astra Telepathica, Weird Boys at 8 and 2, Eldar Seers at 8, and then we go down Squats, Tyranids, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, and Nurgle only had 4 powers in the deck. So yeah, you would pick between 1 and 4 powers depending on the psychic mastery level before the game begins. So it was a randomized deck mechanic there too. Now if you were a Nurgle sorcerer and you were psychic level 4 and you picked all 4 powers from the Nurgle deck, you're pretty much going to get what you wanted. So maybe not as random as it kind of is now with the rolling and stuff like that. So anyway, moving on, we just go to the different psychic powers, stuff like that, dealing with psychic powers, how all the rules like there. So here's the best example here is an Orc Warboy, Master Level 2, is dealt 2 psychic power cards, Edbutt and Wog. Because both of these powers affect enemy psychers, neither of them can be used to make direct psychic attacks on the enemy player. Decides to discard Edbutts in favor of another randomly dealt power. This time he's dealt Brain Bust, a useful power for attacking both enemy and view. So there's some special rules there. If you weren't able to do attacks, you could swap them out. So you got some reroll action going on, or redealing action. Dealing priority and all that stuff. This was how players drew from the deck. So it just, again, it's different psychic phase, different planning steps. Before you even got started in the game, there's a little bit of a mini card game you get to pick from. But psychic disciplines here, the Marines, the Space Marine Librarians got to pick from Librarian powers, and then the backup tertiary powers could be Inquisition and Adeptus powers. Inquisitors and Grey Knights, obviously they're going to start with the Inquisition powers, and they can pick from Librarian and Adeptus powers. And it goes through all the different guys, all the different races that you could pick from. So pretty cool stuff there. Psychic phase, how that all worked, determine the warp flux, deal warp cards, and use psychic powers. So that was basically the level. The warp flux is how influential the psychic activity is in the game. The greater, obviously, the greater the flux, the more the less influential psychic powers will tend to be. So it's kind of inverse of what you might think. When the warp flux is great, psychics are able to draw on more energy and use their powers, but the extra energy also makes it easier for their opponents to defend themselves. Basically, you're going to roll off. The maximum warp flux, so if there's only 2 psychers on the table, you're rolling 2d6. It's basically just a d6 for each guy. So then you deal the warp cards, and then you spent the warp cards like warp charges in current 40k to get stuff done. So special warp cards. There's also a nullify card, which you could use to straight up cancel powers. If you use that, you roll on a d6, 4, 5, or 6, the power's canceled. So you play that card to stop other powers. So the first nullify attempt was also assumed to be your highest level psyker. That fails, the next attempt is made with your next highest level, but you still require a 5 or 6 to see instead of a 4, 5, or 6. So it kind of got more difficult the more cards you would use. You could also spend more cards to increase the result. So it was kind of a, yeah. You could play extra nullify cards. So anyway, give us a quick example of the psychic phase. I'm not going to get into all that because rules wise it doesn't really matter too much anymore. I don't think anybody's really playing 2nd edition. If you are, good on you, keep going. You probably know the rules better than I do at this point, so I'm not going to read through those. This just tells you how to use the psychic powers in the general descriptions here. Psychic power shooting attacks, drawing a straight line, what that means. So it's kind of funny because these are more descriptive and more straightforward rule sets than what we have in some other cases. So there's no ambiguity here, or there's a lot less ambiguity here in some other states. So than some other stuff here. So in the current state of 40k, I should say. Armor saving throws, that talks about all that stuff. And again, it's the same chart as the main one here. So if it's 3 or less, there's no save modifier. 4 is a -1, all the way up to a 9 or more is a -6 for your armor saving throws. Talks about break tests caused by psychic powers and stuff like that remains in play. The splitting up squads is interesting here too. Basically, if you used a Force Dome or something like that to separate squads, say you split a squad up in half, then the smaller of the two halves would try to move towards the larger of the two, and if they ever got back in coherency, they functioned as one squad. But until that point, they basically became two separate units. So kind of interesting that you could split squads like that, you know, maybe unintentionally in some parts, but remains in play and all that stuff. Just different how psychic powers react with the different things here. So and then we get into the commentaries. As I mentioned earlier, this is kind of a unique section. The psychic power commentaries were basically the author, Andy Chambers, there going through and talking about how to effectively use some of these powers, or how they kind of function in game, give you a bit more of a description, more of a background about it. So it's kind of neat to actually read through some of these and to get an idea of kind of what their thought process was behind some of these powers. For instance, the Executioner power, this was one that allowed you to pick off enemy models with a great deal of precision, but you basically got to warp into close combat with them. And it talks a little bit about how to use it and give you some instruction on how to do that. So, and excuse me, a little bit of tactics as well, which is interesting that they went that route. So it's no longer, it wasn't a whole lot of like it is now, where it's just like, here's a description of how the power works, we're done here. It was actually more of a, hey, if you want to use this power, here's kind of what we think it works best with. You may want to go with this power if you're going for this. You may not want to go with this power if you're going for this. So things like that. It's pretty cool. I'm going to read through these powers real quick, and we'll check them off if we still have them here. We still have Guide, which is here. Fortune, still have that one. Destructor, still have that one. Executioner, not so much. Doom, it's kind of still in there, so that's cool. We have Psychic Shield over here for the Librarian. That was Eldar. Psychic Shield, yeah. Teleportation, yeah. Prescience, oh, that's still there. Iron Arm, again, not new. So, second edition, here we go. Iron Arm. And that basically is, in this edition, it was just basically a saving throw that works just like a force field saving throw. So, that's kind of one of the changes there. So Iron Arm was just a save. Adeptus powers, we had Machine Curse, Assail, the Gate, Displacement. So, more that. Funny story, side note about Machine Curse, that was an ability I saw got played on a squad of Terminators. So it was funny because it got cast on the Terminators, and then they basically, when you are attacked in hand-to-hand combat, they will be hit automatically. So because if you were if they were playing it right here, so. But basically, Machine Curse only affects things noted on the card, so it doesn't affect your power armor, force fields, grenades, bionic scanners, jump pack, etc. Machine Curse will immobilize some more weapons and will have their own motive, power, and grab platforms as well as vehicles. Dreadknots and other vehicles with a weapon skill will still not be able to fight in hand-to-hand combat while affected by Machine Curse. If they are attacked in hand-to-hand combat, they will be hit automatically like normal vehicles instead. So, yeah, Machine Curse, this is again just more of a description and commentary, kind of an FAQ built in there. But if I remember correctly, they cast that on the Terminators. The Terminators could not fight back in close combat, and a squad of scouts killed them. So they may have been playing that wrong, but it was a long time ago, and I don't remember the card off the top of my head. But there you go. That's a fun story about Machine Curse. We go through the Inquisition powers. Vortex, this one was one that was very, very highly sought after. You could throw vortexes out there, and you know, it's just like make a save or die. So that's one of the more popular ones. I remember specifically playing games trying to get Vortex. So then we have Weird Boy, Psychic Powers, the Crunch, Death Wave, Wog, and all those fun ones. Slinish, Psychic Powers, Acquiescence, Beam of Slinish, Fleshy Curse, Zinch Powers, we had Zinch's Firestorm, and then Nurgle, we had Plague Wind, Aura of Decay, Miasma of Pestilence. Squat Psychic Powers, Force Dome, okay. Domination, those two were popular. Psychic Scream for the Tyranids has been around for a long time. We go through the different Wog power and how those all work. So, this is funny. Danger of the Wog power. During the Psychic phase, Orc players dealt half the number of Warp cards rolled for the Warp Flux as normal. The Warp cards that Orc uses are actually generated by Orcs themselves instead of being drawn from the Warp. Therefore, before any Psychic powers are played, the Orc has to roll for each one of his Weird Boys to see if they can control the power of the Wog properly. Calculate how many Wog power each Weird Boy has absorbed on the following table. So this is fun tables for Orcs, because they got all the cool table stuff. I'm going to zoom in here actually, because it's pretty funny. So, number of models within 12 inches. Any number of Gretchen, you get 1 point. Up to 5 Orcs, you get 2. To 10 Orcs, you get 3. over 10 orcs, any number of mad boys, 4 with an asterisk there, any number of hand-to-hand combat in the preceding phase anywhere on the battlefield was +2 asterisk. So draw 1 extra warp card for each weird boy who absorbs a total log power of 4 or more. So if hand-to-hand combat's going on, you're drawing extra dice, or you're drawing extra powers and stuff like that. So it's pretty funny. Just orcs, they love their combat. So fitting for the orcs. Benefits of the log power, go through all that stuff. Warp heads. It was just really funny. The effect. He basically could vomit green psychic power everywhere, forgot something, or his head explodes, stuff like that. Just don't roll a 1. Weird boy warp heads, how they were used and stuff like that. Mad boys, all the fun stuff. I want to point this out too. Weird boy warp head was a 0-1 choice, and it was 194 points base. So they had dudes that were running around with them though too. So Grey Knight Terminators, again, I believe this is one of the first instances for them in 2nd edition. Grey Knight Terminator squads, they had their own psychic powers. Master level 4 was 425 points for the squad. Squad consists of 5 Grey Knight Terminators with Nemesis Force weapons. They had Terminator Tactical Dreadnought armor, 3+ able to 2d6. Yeah, so they could get Aegis suits and refractor fields and a whole bunch of nonsense. They're pretty awesome. Pretty awesome Terminators to run around the battlefield. Have a nice little story. Brother Captain Stern, some of you might remember him from a few editions ago. That's one of his stories. We have the demons in here talking about their powers and how they work and stuff like that. So pretty cool stuff. Strategy cards. I'm blowing through this because we're running short on time here, and it's anyway. So vehicle squadrons and support batteries. We did also include this because this edition started to introduce the vehicle squadrons for certain types of vehicles and stuff like that. So yeah, how they all worked, squad coherency and battery coherency and stuff like that. Pretty dry vehicle rules, really. Nothing too exciting. Vehicle cards, designing and converting vehicles, that was a thing. So this was before the VDR fiascos of 3rd edition, but you could calculate some conversion point values. So if you were going to convert up your own vehicles, basically, if you wanted to do that, there were actually rules to do that. So, and they were included in here. So, and they had a standard points chart here, and we'll zoom in on that real quick so I can point out some of the fun weapons in here. So assault cannons 45 points, auto cannons 25 points, battle cannon, heavy bolter, conversion beamer, cyclone heavy missile or cyclone missile launcher, heavy flamer, all this fun stuff. These are all weapons we've seen before. So pretty cool that you could just basically pay the points. It was a flat point rate for whatever vehicle you were converting. So pretty fun stuff. Moving on here, Space Marine Dreadknots. We have more rules for the Dreadknots. Assault cannon, storm bolter, missile launcher. It goes through all the weapons and stuff like that. So pretty cool. Victory points tables. This was how to calculate whether how big of a game was when you know how big of the win was for you. So basically victory point tables for squads. If each enemy squad, if its value is up to 100 points, 0 points for 50% casualty, 1 point if it's broken or wiped out. It goes through the whole list. So it's very clear here. Up to 100 points, 101 points to 200 points, 201 to 300, 301 to 400. So there's no ambiguity there. Vehicle points, how you would get victory points for tables and stuff like that. So yeah, 50% casualties, damaged, wounded, 50% vehicle disabled. For squadrons, support weapons, 50% destroyed, 50+% destroyed, so stuff like that. So we have another story here real quick, so pretty good stuff. And then we get into the fun part of the book, which is one of my favorite things to look at, is always the catalog. The reason I like looking at these catalogs is because you really get to go back and look at some of the old models and see how far we've come. We have some Orc Warbikes. Oh man, they have the hair, they have mohawks, they have assembly instructions here too, but wow, just holy cow, these bikes look dated at this point, but they were awesome back in the day. Orc bosses, we go through all these. We have Gosgol. I don't know if you guys have seen this one before, but that's the original Gosgol model, and he had his Gretchen buddy, and holy crap, he looked like Kublai Khan but an orc. And he was tiny. He was just an orc dude. He was just the size of a Space Marine, maybe a little bit smaller even. But he didn't have the big orc body that he has now, so pretty crazy stuff. So orc bosses, The old Weird Boys. There's no real other named characters here. I don't see anybody. Minder holding a staff. Yeah. So, yeah, pretty nuts. They were on square bases too, rectangle bases, so I want to call it out for some of these guys. We have the Grey Knight Terminators, the original ones here. They looked pretty wonky. They do not look... They look very ornate, but they look different than other Terminators at the time. So, just more ornate, and they're not as thick or as big as they are now. You can definitely see the change there. Again, on the over here, and then their Nemesis Force weapons. We have Chaos Terminators over here. I remember some of these models, you know, as a kid looking at them. They looked pretty sweet. The Chaos Assault Cannon, which eventually became the Reaper autocannons. So, but they were called Chaos Assault Cannons back in the day. So, Inquisitor Terminators as well. Then we have the Eldar Dreadnought. If you're looking for an out-of-print Eldar Dreadnought, I know a guy. But it's one of these bad boys. And, man, I'll be honest, I'm glad to see these models go. They looked pretty cool at the time, but technology's come a long way. They look way better now, I think. So, it's the same deal with the Warwalkers. I love them for what they were at the time, but man, I'm glad we got new ones. So, Warlocks and Farseers. These models really haven't changed in like 30 years, pretty much. So, yeah. We have the old school plastics. That is one of the original, if not the original Land Raider. I think it's pretty much, yeah, that's the original Land Raider. That's what they used to look like. Holy crap, they look cool in person still. They look a little goofy, but man, they are pretty cool looking. So then we have the old plastic Predator and Rhino, which is weird because these were actually about the same size of a Land Raider. Like, kind of weird how they did that, but needless to say, they've made some improvements. Calling out there. So Blood Angels Dreadnought. They had different Dreadnoughts for each chapter. They had a Blood Angels one, they had a Dark Angels one, they had a Space Wolf one, who was also Bjorn the Fellhanded. So they had I don't even know if they had an Ultramarine one. I think they did. Yeah, he had the Assault Cannon and the Power Fist. This one, the Blood Angels one, had the Assault Cannon, and I don't remember if it had the Melta underneath, but this one's got the Stormbolter arm, so I guess not. But yeah, the Ultramarine one had the Assault Cannon arm and a regular Power Fist. The Blood Angel one obviously had the Multi-Melta. The Space Wolf one had I think Assault Cannon Lightning Claw, and the Dark Angels had a Twiddling Las and a Missile Launcher one. So back in the day, the metal Dreadnoughts, and that was the only way to get those arms, really, was you had to buy the specific Dreadnought. I don't know how you had the double-fisted Dreadnought, so I knew a guy, he said he had a miscast of a left arm, he converted to a right arm. I don't know if that was true or not, but whatever. I want to point this out real quick too. Let's just zoom in real fast. Look at that bad boy. Squat Champion. Who wouldn't want an army of space dwarves, right? I mean, look at him. There's another Squat Warrior right there. Come on, they're adorable. They're terrible. Oh my kid. But still, they were in the game. There you go. So that's pretty much it. Space Wolf Scout Sergeant up there. I'm gonna call him out. Eldar Harlequin right there in the corner. The old school Imperial Assassins. So, but that's it for this book, Dark Millennium. Hope you enjoyed our ride on the BoLS Time Machine of the way back when here in the Dark Millennium 40K source book for all things psychic powers and whatnot. So again, AdamHarry from BoLS. This has been another Retro Corner review. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one. I'm signing off. I'm out. I got more stuff to do. Woo!